Hi everyone, welcome back again to this session. Today we are going to work on the hands-on lab and it's gonna be pretty simple. It's a Docker Terraform lab and I'm just gonna show you how we can deploy the Terraform code on top of it. So let me open the tutorial. So I'm just gonna use the official tutorial that is provided by the Terraform or the HashiCorp. So I'll just go here in the associate preparation and then just go to content list. And that is where we left yesterday, right? We discussed how Terraform works, and now today we are going to discuss about the hands-on lab. So let me make it full screen so it will be more visible for you guys. And let me launch. All right, it's now deploying the Docker container. It's deploying the environment for us to run the Terraform code to deploy Nginx Docker container. So this particular lab is really good, I would say. So if you see on the right side of your screen, there is a code description, like what kind of files we have to create. On the left side, you see the files editor. So this is probably the editor that you can use, and on the right side you have the files, right? So let's talk about the first file here. So if you see the terraform.tf file, that is the first file that you are going to create when you are trying to create any Terraform code. Now, why this particular file is needed? So if you see this particular file, basically with this file you are able to tell Terraform what kind of provider do you want to use. So when I say again provider, so what is that? Like, let's say if you want to deploy the application to the AWS, the provider will be AWS. If you want to deploy the application to Azure, the provider will be Azure. Now, since for this example, we are going ahead with Docker, so that is the reason you will see Docker as a required provider here. Now, you're also providing the source for that particular provider, where to get it, and what version of that provider that you want. Now, you might ask, Sahil, this is okay, but how would I know all of this information? Like, shall I remember it, or how would I understand or remember all this information? Because there might be hundreds of providers, and how I'm supposed to learn everything, right? So answer is simple. You don't have to remember anything. You don't have to memorize anything. Just go to the Google and search for Terraform provider, and just provide the name of the provider that you are interested in. In this example, I'm interested in Docker, so I'm just gonna put Docker here. Once you go to the provider page, it's gonna give you all the code that is needed for you to run this particular Terraform provider module. So if you see here, it has the source, which basically tells where to get this provider from, and then there is this version, right? Of like what version of provider you want to download, right? Now moving on to our lab, the next thing that you are going to see, let me increase this thing. All right, yeah. So let's talk about the next thing, that is required version. So now this particular required version is a Terraform version. So it's not the provider version, but a Terraform version. And basically you can play with this, like you can make it like less than or equal to or something like that, which is like you are basically trying to lock down the version of Terraform that should be used, because your code will be written according to that, right? So it's basically locking the Terraform version itself. Now moving on to the next file. Now if you see main.tf file, so Terraform file is like kind of a configuration file that you are using. Now main.tf file will contain your code. So whatever code you are trying to write, so that particular code will be deployed, or will write that particular code for the infrastructure here, right? So as you see in this example, I just have to copy and paste this particular example. So let me see if I can copy paste. All right, so I have the file copy pasted here. Now I'm gonna explain this file to you. So now again, the same thing. First thing, in any main.tf file, we define the provider. So what is the provider? And again, if you see this bracket, so inside this you can mention specific properties for the provider, like that you want to specify in this particular environment. Now I'm not gonna jump directly on that because we are going to see lots of examples on top of that. So whenever you see the main.tf file, you are going to see the provider and then the resource. So what is a provider? So basically provider, again, it's Docker that we are using. And with respect to the resource, so resource is nothing but it's kind of a children of your provider. So basically, for example, if I am talking about Docker, so the children for Docker can be Docker image or Docker container or anything of that sort, which is like kind of a Docker resource. If I'm talking about AWS, the resource can be EC2 instance or S3 bucket or anything of that sort, right? So it's kind of a resource that you are trying to create under this provider. Now, the first resource, if you have studied Docker, the Docker containers need a Docker image to run, right? So that is the reason the first thing we are creating here is Docker image. Now, if you see this name, you see the Nginx as a name, right? But it's upon you. You can change that name, right? This is just the resource name. So this does not signify that the image is Nginx or anything of that sort. For neat code and for easy to read code, you should use relevant word. So for this example, I'm using Nginx as in like image. So that is the reason I'm using Nginx as a name of that particular resource. Now you can create multiple resource with, like, I can create something like my Docker image, and that will also work because you are just giving name to the resource. So the resource is Docker image. Now the Docker image resource itself is fixed. You can change this particular name, and inside this you have to provide the name of the image that you are going to use. So for this example, we are going to use Nginx image, so that is why I have provided the full name. And then, do you want to keep it locally or not? So I don't want to keep it locally, so I'm just using false, right? So now you might again ask, okay Sahil, but I cannot remember everything, right? So you just have to again go back to your provider page. Just go to, on the left side you will see resources. Just click on that resource, and now since you are trying to create the image, you will just click on Docker image. And in this particular Docker image, you are going to see all the examples that you can use, and based on that you can just choose whatever options. Like there might be like options like, do you want to keep it locally, what can be the answers for that option and everything, right? So lots of options here, so you can just choose based on the requirements you have, right? Now moving back again to this code, full screen. Now once you have the image created, the next thing you have to do is basically you have to create the container. Now for container, if you notice here, the image is, again, we are using Docker image, which is this resource, and then what is the resource name, which is Nginx. So that is the reason I'm using Nginx. And now we are using image ID. I'll explain it what is image ID. So basically once the Terraform creates this particular image, it will have the image ID. So to make sure we are referencing the correct image, we will be using that image ID, and this particular image ID will be unique for this particular image that is created here. Now the name of the container. So I'm giving tutorial as the name. The name of the container can be anything. And then I'm giving the ports for that particular container. Now again the same thing. I'll just go ahead here, and to write that particular container, I can again grab the code from here, right? So you don't have to remember anything. You just have to understand how the code is written, what is the properties, what are the properties that are needed for that particular code, right? Now moving on to the code itself, it's pretty simple code. What we are trying to do is simply we are trying to create a container, and that will be using port 80 and 8000, and basically it's going to use the Nginx as a command, right? So now the next thing what I'm going to do is let me make it full screen again. All right, yeah. So now the next thing I'm gonna do is simply run this command. So to run any command, I just have to basically open a terminal, and Terraform should be configured, and in the next session maybe I'll show you how you can install Terraform locally as well. So these files are saved here, and now I'm gonna go ahead and show you the files. Now I have two files. I'll show one more interesting thing here. So if you see, I just have main.tf and terraform.tf. those two files are here, right? Now the next thing what I'm gonna do is, the first thing whenever you run the Terraform is the Terraform init command. Now init is initialization. Now if you notice one thing here, there were only two files right here, right? Now when I run Terraform init, it's gonna initialize the backend and it's gonna create the backend files for us. So if I do ls-a here, you are going to see that now it has created something like .terraform as a directory, and it also created a log file here, right? So that means whenever you initiate Terraform, it basically downloads the provider. So whichever provider you mention in your file, that will be downloaded. For this example, it was Docker, so it just downloaded that package, matched that particular package, and then basically install that particular provider. So now if you can see here, I just ran Terraform init, and then it created the .terraform directory and .htl log file, right? Now let's check what is inside .terraform folder. So it will show us some information about that. So I'm just gonna use -al, and then I'm just gonna provide the directory here. So it will be Terraform providers. So basically in the providers, there is a registry folder, and inside that it basically created the provider Docker, right? And if you just do ls, you are going to see the version that we specified, and then basically there are binaries for that. And then basically if you see this one, you are going to see the provider has been downloaded here, right? So this is how basically when you run the Terraform init, it's gonna download and run the binaries, right? Now the next command is Terraform plan, as we discussed yesterday, right? Plan is nothing but it will just plan everything for you. It will show you the information what it's gonna deploy on your machine, but it's not something which will actually deploy anything. So I'll just show you something before we do any deployment here. So if I run docker ps, so everything is empty. If I run docker image here, everything is empty. Or sorry, docker image ls, right? Everything is empty. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna run Terraform plan. And if you see Terraform plan, it's gonna utilize this thing and it's gonna come up with some information for us. So if you see, it created Docker Nginx file, image, and it also created Docker container, right? So it's gonna create that. So it's basically showing you the plan that it's gonna create this infrastructure. So if you're okay with this kind of infrastructure, you can go ahead and apply it. But if you think, no, something is wrong, I need to change my configuration, you can go back and change it, right? So it's very important and useful feature we have here. Now if you see, once the Docker image will be created, it will have this ID. So basically, if you remember, I was talking about the ID. This is the particular ID that it will reference in its code, right? Now, simply I'll run Terraform apply, and before that, I'll just show you again that if I run docker ps, nothing is deployed. If I run docker image ls, it's gonna show you that nothing is deployed here, right? And now if I run Terraform apply, it's gonna apply that particular code. I'm just gonna say yes, and it's gonna create the image first of all, and then it's gonna basically deploy that particular container, right? So this is very useful actually. I'm just gonna put myself here, and if you see, it created two resources. And if you see, there's this docker ps shows you the container, and if you run docker image ls, it's gonna show you the image that it downloaded. So it basically created that, right? Now to destroy anything, you just run Terraform destroy, and it's gonna destroy everything. It's gonna show you that I'm gonna destroy the two things here. So it's gonna destroy the container, and it's also gonna destroy the image. Now there are lots of other things actually that happens in the backend that I'm keeping it for the next sessions, so I can discuss each new concept in the new lab, right? And I definitely recommend you to subscribe to this channel and keep watching, keep following me, so I can show you all the tricks and tips about Terraform. So I'm just gonna destroy it, and if I do if I do docker ps again, you're going to see that there is no container, and if I do docker image ls, it's gonna show you there is no image as well. So that's about, guys. So we basically use Terraform to create our first container. We use Terraform to destroy our infrastructure, and that's about it, guys. It's really interesting topic, and we would have lots of fun ahead. I would again ask you to please subscribe, and like and share my channel and share it with your friends as well. Thank you so much again for your time. I'll see you in the next one.